Hello, my name is Tyler Ash, and I'm excited to talk with you today about the Every Student Succeeds Act, a law that really talks about how states and the federal government monitors testing and student growth throughout the country. All right, let's go over what ESSA is, and let's talk a little bit about its history. So the act itself was passed in 2015 by President Obama, and really it's one of three acts that have to do with the federal government's relationship with public education. The original act in this lineage was passed by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965 as a part of his war on poverty. It created a tier system and categorized schools based upon these tiers and based upon things like economic context, academic needs, and racial percentage, and gave different supports based upon which schools fit into these tiers. In 2002, President George Bush expanded on this with the No Child Left Behind Act, requiring schools to test on subjects like reading and math. And this is still something that ESSA keeps today. However, the big change from No Child Left Behind is that states now get to decide how to judge schools, whereas before it was the federal government that judged schools. Now, the four core provisions of ESSA are as follows. The states make the rules. They decide how to grade schools with approval from the federal government. That there are no more automatic punishments, whereas before schools were automatically punished if a school wasn't shown to be progressing in their state's test scores. But more than that, it was more than just about test scores. ESSA includes provisions like ensuring that student participation rates are met within a certain threshold, that a school culture is positive or progressing. And what's important and is shared across all three acts is that the gaps are still tracked and shown. Students who struggle with different learning disabilities or struggle with English proficiency and language speaking skills, those students are identified and supported, even if those students are within a school that on average performs well in those categories. When ESSA was passed in 2015, it was largely perceived as a win. It received bipartisan support, and people agreed that it fixed much of No Child Left Behind's biggest problems. In giving states agency to control the accountability of their public schools, people from those states felt like they had a buy-in into how they wanted their systems to work. Teachers were also largely relieved that they had less work and less pressure. Today, it's a little bit more mixed. Some states worry that students aren't receiving enough support. Others say that the test never really went away and that our systems still are geared towards teaching to the test. Some strengths of ESSA. It gave states more freedom to make their own rules. It keeps track of how different groups of students are doing, so problems don't get away. And it looks at more than just one test score. It's a more holistic understanding of education with the individual attention from the state itself rather than the federal government. Some weaknesses and criticisms. Well, kids still take a lot of tests, and a lot of these students are not a fan of those tests. And while every state has to give tests, the rules for giving the tests are different. And so on a national level, it's really hard to learn from and to compare different schools. More than that, some states may not push hard enough to help struggling students. They may fudge the numbers a bit in order to have a better overall score. Here's what ESSA looks like at my school. While my school received a very high rating of A within our state, we still have to show progression, which means that my instruction is tailored towards having the students meet those state testing standards, which results in much more of my instruction being tailored towards identifying students who have different deficiencies and learning gaps and tailoring my teaching in accordance to meeting that standard and closing those gaps.